Exchange press conference. I'm happy to say that today's press conference is going to focus on our comments and the party positions on the recent financial supplementary request that came to the Parliament on Monday. I think we expressed previously our position in the press. We were not there in person. We felt very strongly that we should be showing our disapproval for the lack of opportunity given to our 8 suspended members to have a hearing, which is a tradition and a requirement in any kind of situation of this kind, and certainly in the courts. With further ado, I would like to just let you know that we have joining us today, myself, Kathy Hughes, Kamrat Ramjatan, leader, and the person that will be presenting the information or position on that financial paper is Member of Parliament, Jaretha Finance. So Jaretha, can I ask you to go right into it? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As it pertains to the state of the economy, as we would like to highlight it today, the first thing that we want to begin with is inflation. A few weeks ago, the AFC predicted that the PPP's promised inflation rate of 4.1% at the end of 2022 would have already been passed by July. Now the Bureau of Statistics has confirmed our prediction to be true. Inflation for May to June 2022 was reported at 1.7%. This brings the total inflation for 2022 to 4.9% for the first half of the year. We once again state our prediction that by the end of 2022, inflation will likely surpass 8%. This would make 2022 the single worst year of inflation in decades. This extreme rate of inflation requires immediate action to address the erosion of spending power that workers across Guyana are facing. According to the budgetary allocations for the year 2022, and even as citizens of Guyana await to see and or feel the impact of the budgeted $552.9 billion as was passed in the National Assembly back in February, the government added another $44.7 billion, bringing the total approved for spending thus far for the year 2022 to $597.6 billion. However, both the national budget and the supplemental financial paper fail to provide any relief to public servants. The AFC calls on the government to immediately start collective bargaining with stakeholders for an inflation-based increase with a timeline of 3 months at maximum to be completed. The AFC takes this opportunity to remind the unions that the PPP administration back in 2016, with a budget of $230 billion, the PPP administration, their representatives at the level of the National Assembly, called for a 50% increase to be given to public servants. So certainly, with the allocations for 2022 being $597.6 billion today, negotiation should most certainly begin at the maximum of 50% increase. In addition, the AFC have been paying keen attention to some particular sectors. Firstly, the fishing sector. The plight of the fishermen, particularly those of the small and medium scale level, has been ventilated on all media platforms. But to date, there have been no intervention from government to chart a way forward for the fishing folk. The government has set a target of 8.9% for expansion in the fishing sector for the year 2022. This target will not be realized at the end of the year without proper intervention into the sector. The sector is one of many that has been suffering from the beginning of the year, and the livelihood of the people continue to deteriorate. In addition, the sugar sector. Allegations of corruption under the PPP administration is mounting daily, and more recently, allegations of corruption at Gaisuco, as it is related as it relates to the intended purchase, rather, of tractors has been center stage, even as the government continued to pump money into the sector with no elevated production to show. It is true, if true, rather, anyone associated with such corrupt practices must be held accountable. The AFC calls for an investigation to be launched into the allegations of corruption at Gaisuko. The failure of the PPP, and let me just wrap this up really quickly, guys, by saying the failure of the sugar sector began under the PPP. And the AFC sees the actions of the PPP today as, with regards to the sugar sector, as continued failure. We call on the administration to be honest about the sector and to provide real incentives, real mechanisms, and real policy positions that would push the sector forward in the way in which the APNU AFC had managed the sector. And as we say, continue to right-size the sector and do not go down the hole of pumping money blindly into this sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaretha. As we said earlier, today we are giving the members of the media an opportunity to respond to that issue presented by Jaretha Finance, and also to any other issue that you may want information from the AFC on. So we can go straight to our first question. Please start by identifying yourself and, of course, the organization that you represent. And I would ask anybody that's not speaking to mute your microphone. Thank you very much.
Nazima's hand is raised, and New Stock, Guyana, which I think is Dem Waves.
Hi.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Go ahead, Nazima.
3 questions, if you don't mind. 1 on the statement and 2 outside of today's statement. There's been some criticism about the lack of attendance to Parliament, and given the fact that this could be an opportunity to question some of these particular issues, especially on the paper, on the parliamentary record. How do you respond to that? Secondly, there have been allegations by a sitting member of the Guyana Police Force implicating the crime chief as well as senior officers in trying to cover up murder that took place a couple of years ago, an execution, sorry. Do you have any faith that the Guyana Police Force can proceed with these investigations into these allegations and have these officers charged, or anything can come out of that? And my third has to do with the current issues with the Gaisuko, the sugar corporation. Is the corporation being prudently run at this time? And would you say that Mr. Sesnarayan Singh should resign?
If I can take the first one, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. For the first one, I want to say that I know the concerns being ventilated there about not attending the National Assembly, particularly at the last sitting where the supplementary financial paper was presented. We did note all of the risks that will be taken, but we believe very strongly that the suspension of the unjustified suspension of 8 parliamentary members of our colleagues was reason enough for us to do that. And I want to add at this point that I would have witnessed, made it my duty to follow the sitting that day. And I can say that based on our experience in the National Assembly previously in questioning the budgetary allocations, both at the budget setting and during the supplementary papers, I can tell you that it was no different. It was no different. Answers were not given, even at the level in which the PPP administration was there questioning themselves as to where the money will be spent. There was still absolutely no information given. directly to say that it was a process that was properly looked at, that allocations were being requested based on specific budgetary principles and so forth. We had a glaring example, for example, with miscellaneous roads, in which $3 billion was being requested for miscellaneous roads, but even as a member of the PPP stood up and asked for those roads to be listed. That was not done, but rather an answer was given saying they will do as much as possible. That shows clearly that there was no structure in budgeting, and even with our presence there, if the roads are not identified, it's just clearly not identified. So the administration continued to use Parliament as just a way as just a process. You know, you come and you go through the process because they know they have a one-seat majority, and they have been exploiting that one-seat majority from the very beginning. Thank you.
I want to add to that response and just say that we have observed, and it's a good time to raise these issues. We've raised it in the press also, but it's good to observe as this parliamentary session closes this week, that there's so many challenges and errors taking place within the parliamentary structure. It really is not functioning the way it was intended to function. The fact, and we've seen this, we had close to 3 weeks every single day from 10 in the morning, sometimes till 2 and 3 in the next morning, which was how, what took place during our budget process. And still, we had constant requests for more detailed information on allocations in the questioning section. And you will know a lot of that information was not provided. It points to the fact that the whole feeling and operations of our parliament today is far from where it needs to be. There is a complete breakdown in terms of having a process in place that some of the good recommendations made that come from our side, the opposition side of the House, might be seriously considered, might be implemented in a view to ensuring that we have development for all in Guyana. We continue to mention that we represent 50% of the voting population. And the fact that there's no mechanism in place for us to really participate in presenting ideas that are considered, that maybe the good ones go into some kind of process in developing policies that work to better serve Guyana. So Parliament today really in many respects is a talk shop. You come in there, you ask questions. Questions in Parliament quite often are not dealt with the level of respect that is due. It certainly is not answered with the detail that the population of Guyana deserves. And certainly even written questions that are put to the House, quite often you wait 4 and 5 months for a written response to come. And therefore we felt, although it is a difficult decision to make, although we have no intentions of not attending Parliament in general, but the reality is that with the one-seat majority and the things that I have just described, Parliament really is not working the way I know it worked and operated in 2011 when I first went into Parliament. So that would be our answer to the question, the first question on not providing enough opportunity to raise these questions. We have been raising our concerns regarding the financial paper in the press, and for those with the hope that the government, it would initiate debate in the media and that the government might respond. And if we don't get those responses, certainly at the next parliamentary session, we will go through the motions again of raising those questions in the hope that they might be answered in a more timely manner. The questions on the security and that particular incident, and also I think Gaisuko, I would ask Mr. Rabjatan to answer. Thank you.
Kathy, we do have the hand of, News Talk Radio Guyana.
Right. Before we get to News Talk, let me just ask Kamraj if he wanted to add to the questions that Nazima raised, and then we go to News Talk. Kamraj, if you would unmute. Unmute.
Yeah.
We're not hearing you. Thank you.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, we are. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Well, this is most alarming, Nazima. This allegation of corruption from that detective sergeant that was videoed and shown on Facebook and other places. And we believe that now that that has been borne out publicly, there is need for at least, at the very minimum, the Police Complaints Authority to hold an investigation into this alleged cover-up from high quarters within the CID branch of the police force. I wouldn't want to say much more on it, but it is very alarming as to what we are learning happening inside of our police force. We have noted that since the coalition has been out of office, that almost all those recommendations made by Russell Coombe, the British security sector reform expert, have been shelved by the ministry and the Guyana Police Force. And that is what will very much cause all of these problems. So the continuation of the professionalization of the police force will have come to a halt, and we are going to certainly experience all these manner of misdeeds at high levels. In relation to the Gaisuko problems, of course, Sis Narayan Singh, we said at a previous press conference, must resign immediately. It appears that he's not going to resign, and so it is incumbent then on the government of Guyana, and especially the minister, Zulfikar Mustafa, to sack him, literally sack him. Look, the problems at Gaisuko were there a long time before, and they include a lack of labor as a result of the present and the next generation of Guyanese who are to be the cane cutters and so on, fleeing from the sector. They're fleeing from the sector, that's one. Number two, even if they were not fleeing from the sector, the cost of production is almost 2 times the cost of what the selling price is in the international market. And what we have in Sis Narayan Singh is but throwing salt in the wounds of that sector, and literally turning the knife, as it were, because Sis knows nothing about sugar, quite frankly. And all the propaganda that he's going to put forward there is not going to turn that sector around. What can turn that sector around is the solution that the coalition had come up with. And that is a continuation of the right sizing, and probably even a refining of that right sizing of Gaisuko that was executed by the coalition government. Remember, this year alone, budgetary allocation was $6 billion, and the supplementary allocation now comes up $3.4 billion. That's $9.4 billion. And I'm certain they've put some other monies. It's coming up almost $10 billion. That is in addition to, I think, $11 billion last year. So you have already gotten $20 billion into Gaisuko, absolutely none of the targets being reached, and even the revised lower targets not being reached. And of course, we have protest demonstrations via GAU workers not turning up to work at so many of the factories and the estates. So we do not see that anything but the right sizing and the continuation will help that sector.
Thank you, Kamraj. We can go to News Talk Radio now.
Yes, good afternoon, Kathy. Good afternoon, Mr. Washington. I would like to know from Ms. Finance whether she can tell us what are some of the solutions that can be put in place to deal with the rising inflation, and how would she measure up those solutions, if she has any, with the fact that non-traditional exports or non-traditional sectors are not performing as well as they ought to, and probably balancing that out also with the possibility of any increase in salaries. In essence, what's your solution, and how will you ensure that those solutions do not add to additional inflation? That's my first question. And the second question is, what is being done by your party to perhaps ensure that for both Region 4 and Region 10, that your party attains the vice chairmanship of both regions? I know this has been a long, burning, vexing question, but do you find any resolution in sight for both Region 4 and 10?
Thank you. Okay, Jerita.
I think I'll deal with the first, and I'll ask.
And we'll get Kemraj to do the
The
second.
leader deal with the second one, and I hear the question, and I hear you loud and clear there on the inflation rate. We have said this, I think, if not in press conference back, I said it, that one of the things that we're asking for must be increase in salaries, and I did say that I noted concerns of persons that if you have an increase in salaries, then what does it do with the inflation rate? We are lucky to have the example under the USD administration that the inflation rate was at some point, in the negative, and I think it was 19 where it being at 0.9%. And I know that to say that during that tenure, there was constant increase in wages and salaries. We have to empower persons with disposable income so that they can go out there and cope with what is going on. The administration, as is right now, is not necessarily going against that principle. We see them going out there regularly and saying that they are giving cash grants and handouts to various persons. They give cash grants because they say persons need to have money to cope with the inflation rate. It is on that same level, with that same thinking, that we are saying public service needs to have revision when it comes to the wages and salary, more of an inflation-based revision when it comes to that. I did note your question when it comes to the non-traditional sectors not doing so well, and this all have to do with the fact that the government, the PPP administration has not been putting the focus into these sectors to make sure that they do well. This is something that we've been complaining about from day one. I mean, very recently, we've heard much more amplified talks when it comes to the Dutch disease, and the fact that this may very well be the case we're in right now, when we're looking at the economy, the GDP, the bulk of the GDP, and the fact that the other sectors are suffering. This is not just because the people or the players within the sectors are not doing the work. It's because they're not being properly invested in. There is no clear path, with no well-structured way in which the government is going about doing these things. We can look at agriculture, for example, for a more recent example. We're hearing a lot of headlines. We've seen a lot of headlines. We're hearing a lot of talks as to black belly sheep. We know that we have those coming in. Have there been any structured proposal put forward, structured plan put forward to the public to say this is where it's going, and this is to ensure the longevity of the project? If that project comes by and it does not work and it fails, it will be because of the lack of incentives to get those things done. The non-traditional sectors need to be boosted, and we have been asking for these things. We've been saying that the resources from the oil and gas sector needs to be reinvested into these sectors. So we can't just say, well, if they're not doing as well and all of that. We have to acknowledge the fact that the energy, the investment, the incentives have not been pushed in that direction. And we see focus being just tremendously on the oil and gas sector. And even at that level, it is not being done in a structured way so that the resources will trickle down to the people, because trickling down does not work. So we need direct injections so that persons will be able to cope with the economic hardship, cope with the inflation rate. And the only sure way to do it is to have direct transfers. And it so happens that the direct transfer, the sure way of having direct transfer going to the economy is through wages and salaries. And we know that when we inject money through wages and salary, those are transferred again directly into the economy when it comes to persons shopping and so forth.
Ms. Finance, just a clarification, you talked about increase in salaries, but as opposed to cash grants, the increase in salaries will be recurrent expenditure. And my question to you still stands. In the context of a recurrent expenditure and what the opposition has already cited as low-performing traditional sectors, how will you prevent that recurrent expenditure of increased salaries influencing additional inflation?
I think that, okay, let me say, there is no evidence to show that it will cause inflation, and that's what I'm saying. I'm saying if you were to look back at the 5 years of the AFC being in office, even then you would note that there was no evidence to show that you increasing wages and salary would do that. And I don't.
But the conditions, Mr. Finance, are different now. The conditions are different now with external factors such as the war between Russia and Ukraine, also COVID, which did not obtain in large measure during your period in office. Hence my question.
Okay, so I note you bringing this to the war between Russia and Ukraine, but besides us having a direct relationship when it comes to the oil and gas industry, what other direct implication does the war between Russia and Ukraine have to do with the increase in the price of plantain coming from Essequibo and so many local produced items? There is no direct relationship, and we cannot just assume at any point in time that is an excuse. And I'm glad you asked that question, because I have been noting so many persons that are supposed to be of high academic standing out there just mouthing these things that, oh, because of the global supply chain, or because of the war between Russia and Ukraine. And that is not so. Those things are easy to say, but there's absolutely no evidence, there's absolutely no data to support that claim. And that is the issue that I have. I mean, on many points, and I do hear you there, but we cannot just go out on a broad base and say this is what is going on, because we have no data to show that. And
well, globally, the international financial institutions and economists have been saying this, not only locally, but also in the Caribbean and elsewhere.
And again, I say, when we speak about the inflation rate of locally produced items, you cannot tell us about the global supply chain. And these are the things that we have been focusing on tremendously. And if I can go even more directly, in the 2022 budget passed in the National Assembly in February, the budget speech was presented by the Minister of Finance, spoke about incentives to deal with cost of living. One of the incentives stated right there in that presentation was having farm to market, those interventions there, farm to market rules and access and those things. The farm to market project has been ongoing, yet we have the prices of goods coming through the local market being on the exorbitant increase. When we talk about things like cabbage, for example, 2 pounds of cabbage is $1,300. How do you translate that to the global supply chains, and how do you blame the war between Russia and Ukraine? Again, I note what the intention is, and I note the comments being made, but I'm saying that I think that it is time that persons there, especially persons of academic standing that is speaking out at the local level, stop giving persons the idea that the war between Russia and Ukraine is causing all that is happening at home today. It is not fact-based. There's absolutely no data to support that, and we need to do better.
Don't you believe that the fuel price impact also on inflation globally?
Dennis, your question wasn't so clear, very muffled. Can I ask Kemraj? You're muted right now. Can I ask Kemraj to deal with the issue of the Region 10 and Region 4 Vice Chair?
No, before I go there, Kathy, I want to supplement the answer of Joretta.
Sure.
Look, please do not make the distinction, a half distinction, that when we were in government and we increased salaries and all of that. In 2020, we left also the PPP government with over 607 million US dollars up to last year, December. And this year we will have another 1.2 billion US dollars. So if we have left all of this money, which was not left during the coalition, we didn't have, and we did not have inflation, please do not just make the distinction halfway. When we didn't have the oil monies, we managed inflation. You got so much monies now, and you do not want public servants to have an increase so that they could go and live as a result of the high cost of living now? I think it is almost dastardly. And please don't utilize only half of the distinction. We also have oil monies now. The other point I wish to make is that there is discrimination in the cash grant delivery. What I have learned now, I am in America, the monies were sent to taxpayers, those who pay their taxes, who got TIN numbers and Social Security. When we have been asking, where did the cash transfers go to? Please put it on the website so that we will know of exactly each individual who got what, where they are living, their names and so on. The PPP government is not doing that. However, they now want to argue that the public servants must not get an increase in these high cost of living times. We would like, because their names are on the salary sheets and of teachers, nurses, and everybody. So it would be easy to do the cash transfer directly to them. But when you are doing cash transfers to flood relief farmers, you don't know who it is and who got 8 million as against who got $200,000. And so there could be corruption in that. But like in America here, we should do it like that, where there is a record of genuine names, people who are on the taxpayers or Social Security benefits list. On the other question of Region 4 and Region 10 Vice Chair, well, look, the Alliance for Change has indicated that in view of the fact that we will not be in a position to get the Region 4 Vice Chair, we would like at least the Region 10 Vice Chair to be granted to the AFC. And our leadership has come up with a name, Coretta Braffith, and we will be asking the APNU people to support that name so that we can get Coretta Braffith as the next Vice Chair for Region 10. I think the meeting, statutory meeting, will be held on the next Tuesday. That was the arrangement that we made, that indeed the AFC should name the Vice Chair, just like we did with Region 4, but because of certain circumstances, it didn't happen. Well, we are hoping now that the person that our national executive voted on and named, Coretta Braffith, should be given that position. If she is not given that position, well, there might be some consequences in relation to the relationship and all of that. But we are hoping that all the councillors there, or the majority of them in the APNU AFC coalition, vote for Coretta.
Have you gotten any preliminary assurances, though, that this will happen?
Well, yes, because of course the arrangement is that who the leadership of the AFC would like to see be there as the Vice Chair. And if the AFC NEC agreed to a certain name, I am expecting that that will happen.
But you went as far as talking about consequences. Why did you go that far, Mr. Ramsden?
Because just like how we had agreed at Region 4, Dennis, it did not happen as a result of certain circumstances. I am hoping that those circumstances do not again find themselves being applicable here. Now that you have raised the question.
Who is, could you give us a snapshot of this nominee? Who is she? And a little bit about her background, essentially.
Oh, she has been a long-standing AFC member, a regional councillor, since the elections. I think she was there before. A pretty well-known activist of the Alliance for Change. and has all the qualifications to be the vice chairperson.
Why is it so advantageous at least to get a vice chair for Region 10, if not 4?
No, well, with 4, it has already gone to Mr. Sandy. That was supposed to go to Mr. Nielsen McKenzie. Region 10 now, I think as a result of the death of the vice chair there, we have a vacancy. That Region 4 vice chair who died was an APNU person. They had both the APNU and the AFC, chair and vice chair. But to make the accommodations, we are saying that at least at Region 10, we have the vice chair position. And since it's the leadership that will have to make the selection, we have indicated as much that it should be Coretta.
I think at this point, maybe I could ask if there are any other questions from anyone else. All right. Sharad, would you confirm that there are no other hands up that
I'm seeing
not
Samsung SM. I think that is Kaishore.
Oh, that's Zina.
Yeah.
Go right ahead, Zina. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to ask, there's been talk relating to the Sue matter for an investigation. The newspaper would have reported in today's paper, the Auditor General saying that persons must request an investigation or a probe into such a matter where state resources are involved. Is that an avenue that the party, the opposition, might be interested in to get answers as it relates to his allegations and where the state assets are concerned?
Kamraj, you want to take that? If you unmute, please.
Yeah. Look, in relation to this matter, the Alliance for Change has already made it quite emphatic and unequivocal that the World Bank, its corruption unit or anti-corruption unit, has indicated that that the AFC has indicated that World Bank unit conduct that investigation.
So, sorry, Kamraj, can I ask you just to check your audio if it went down a bit? You want to
Sorry,
say
are you hearing me?
much better. Please
Yeah.
proceed.
Yeah, it is in connection with what we have already indicated. We feel that the World Bank is far superior a unit to conduct that kind of allegation being made in the Vice News interview, rather than our Auditor General. And I rather suspect that half the country might not want to support what our Auditor General will come up with. And rather than suffer that consequence or that impact of his investigation, it is better. Now, I am also understanding, that the World Bank could come in and do this investigation free of cost. So why not have an international perspective to the investigation? It is an international kind of allegation being made that the vice president is doing things untoward in relation to Chinese contractors. And so it ought to be international in perspective. And then we know that the World Bank has tremendous capacities and personnel that can do it and come up with recommendations that can help us here in Guyana. That I am not so certain about our Auditor General on a matter of this scale.
Thank you. Can I ask if there are any other questions? I see News Talk.
Yes, yes, Kathy. Mr. Amchanan, I suspect this question may have arisen in some form or fashion in the not too distant past, but I still pose it in the way that I'm hoping I can elicit a kind of a response that will be satisfactory. And that is, what exactly has the opposition proposed to the Constitutional Reform Committee of the National Assembly?
Unmute, Kamraj, please. We're still not hearing you, Kamraj.
Please, someone else is muting me. Okay, yeah. You hearing now?
Yes, we are. Please proceed.
Yeah. Well, look, we are happy that we are going to get the passage of the relevant bills, constitutional consultation bill, as was promised by the Attorney General, so that we can now proceed with the constitutional amendments that our countrymen will want. Remember, this is not only something that the AFC should have, or the PPP or the PNC. We would like, if you would like me to identify a couple of things, is we feel that the powers of the president is too great. We must have that amended in the constitutional reform process whenever that will happen. But of course, it will have to have the support of the various parties and also probably a referendum. There are some of the amendments that will have to have as a requirement not only 2/3 majority of the parliamentarians, but also a simple majority at the referendum. We feel that GCOM must also be amended to have at least 3 more, as we will propose, 3 more private or civil sector members. We have 3 for the opposition, 3 from the government, and 3 from the civil sector that could be there along to make it literally a 10-man commission. There are some reasons why we feel that is necessary, because it is not going to make, say, the chairman of the Elections Commission being the judge of the 2 sides as is presently constituted. So you can have 3 other persons that can make independent decisions, and that can help. There are strengthening of the human rights sections of the Constitution that we would want. And there are a couple of more. Kathy, you can probably help me there.
Yes,
we on the elections side and so on. But these are the things we want. Look, I want to re-emphasize that the constitutional reform process of 2000 has already been a process that we know of and how it should happen. And when the Attorney General was in Parliament arguing that we are not going to Parliament and all of that, he was wasting time, not us, because we must not reinvent the wheel. It is 2 bills that you have to pass. Pass them as quickly as possible, and let us proceed with getting the consultation with all the regions, all the sectors, all the parliamentarians, and so on, so that we can now bring the recommendations back to Parliament and have that process of selecting what and what we should amend in the Constitution and which should matter. Because you're going to have 250 amendments being proposed by the people out there. But are we going to put all of those? No, it will come back, and certain specialized experienced persons will have to then make a selection, and then we in Parliament will have to put it to the Parliament first, and then of course to a referendum if that is required.
Dennis, just 1 minute. Dennis, just 1 minute. The other one that we have proposed is that amendments that would allow for coalitions to be formed after an election. That was the other very, very strong reform that we wanted to see also.
Right, that was the one of them I was about to ask about, Kathy. The other one I want to ask about is whether you would also like to see a return to constituency electoral system like what obtains in most other parts of the Caribbean and previously in Guyana. And do you want to see a return to a non-executive president? Is that going to be part of your proposals as well?
Kamraj is on the committee. I prefer Kamraj to deal with that.
I hope I'm not on mute.
No, we're hearing you loud and clear.
Good, thanks very much. Look, I have made it repeatedly on programs like these, that a third party like the Alliance for Change is going to be in a distressed condition if we were to have first past the post. We will be certainly wiped out. Proportionality of parliamentary representation is best for third parties, because we could win 49,000 votes and still not have one seat in parliament in first past the post system. And we will be very much against that. We prefer PR, proportional representation. And for that reason, we are going to oppose strenuously anything dealing with first past the post as a system that can, then wipe us off the map, as it were. And we have had a history of where previously we had first past the post system, and then in the 1964 elections, I think it has changed, and we have the PR system right up to now. We have a hybrid that came around in the 2000 constitutional reform process, and we like that to continue to be the situation. What was your other question?
A return to an executive president.
Well, we are neither here nor there in relation to that, but certainly the executive position, if it is to continue, must be with reduced powers, powers of appointment, powers, so many other powers, which we are at the appropriate time going to enlist for you when it comes down to us dealing with it at our national executive level.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't think that there are any more questions. Are there any more questions? I see no more hands up. So let me thank our presenters today, Jarita Fernandes and Mr. Kemaraj Ramjitan, and our technical people behind the scenes, including Mr. Sharad Duncan, and most importantly, the media for giving us your time and for covering the issues that have been raised in this press conference. Please stay safe and have a good weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.